Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I am finally upgrading from my 2012 built PC. That's right, my delidded Core i7-3770K that's been running at 4.5 GHz for a multitude of years is finally being replaced by a Core i9-9900K, a beastly processor. Now the reason behind this is simply because I thought for a long time to upgrade. I'm still running DDR3 1600 MHz RAM. I'm running a regular SSD, and I was thinking of running an NVMe SSD, and all of these things you might think, oh, you could actually just upgrade your parts, and I can, but then when the architecture of the processor and the fundamental basis of the PC is pretty old, it's time to kind of get with the times. And I also didn't want any bottlenecking to be occurring with my graphics card, which is an Nvidia RTX 2080 Super. So basically, this is a PC build video. I'll be also doing an overclocking video and also a how have I been getting on after several months of usage, because I'm going to be using this PC as my daily driver. To give you an idea of the new components that are going in, as I said, the Intel Core i9, the NVMe is the SX8200 Pro by XPG. I'll be also having DDR4 RAM, so finally, from DDR3, it's the XPG Spectrix D41, and as a motherboard I have the Asus ROG Maximus Xi Hero Wi-Fi. So it's a pretty cool build, at least on the specs, on paper, but I can't wait to actually try it for myself and put it all together and actually run it all together. Now I should also bear in mind there's a few other components will be coming from my old PC. That includes the case, which is a Fractal R4, the RTX 2080 Super, which I mentioned before, my Corsair SP120 and the SP140 fans, which are case fans, and also I'll have storage units, which are it's a 3 terabyte hard drive. It's a Seagate Barracuda hard drive, and I'll also have a 1 terabyte WD Blue SSD, which we're also using as a separate storage unit, which I have certain games on it. So without further ado, let's get into this build video. So to get things started, I actually had to disassemble my PC. That pretty much seems like an obvious, but unlike a lot of PC build videos you might see online where they're building a PC from scratch, in my case I was, recycling parts, shall we speak, of my old PC build and then bringing it kind of to a modern PC build by installing new parts, as it might seem very obvious. So to start off with, it was pretty simple. Just use the screws and just get rid of the external components such as my GPU and my Wi-Fi card. A little note on the Wi-Fi card, I ended up not putting that in my new PC build simply because the Asus board has built-in Wi-Fi, and I'm actually plugged in via Ethernet to my router, which is very close to me, so there is actually no need for that. What I found quite intriguing is when I was disassembling the PC is, first of all, the amount of cables that was at the back of my PC, which I completely forgot about, and also the amount of dust that accumulated by the CPU cooler. Now it might seem obvious, and even then, even though my Noctua D15 isn't actually all that old, and by say all that old, my all-in-one cooler, which was the Antec 920 liquid cooler, kind of dried out. This was several years ago, at which point I replaced it for an air cooler instead, which was the D15. And since then I haven't looked back, but ever since installing it I never got rid of the fans in the middle and therefore cleaned it out. And you would have probably been able to see that the amount of dust that accumulated over the years is pretty disgusting, to be honest. So if I'm looking back at this, I would say that if you do have an air cooler, maybe regularly clean it out, maybe after 1 year or 2 years, it might be worth your while. And then over here I was just rearranging the drives and of course giving the PC a complete nice clean. I didn't do a perfect job, but I just tried to clean as much dust as I could from the case and in terms of the certain components that I would be reusing, for example the cooler. And given that I'm not a savage, I did want to also clean my old processor and leave it intact for a potential another build, and also make sure that my CPU cleaner was completely squeaky clean for the process of the new processor that I'll be using it on. To start off, on the new build, I put the RAM. I used the A2 and B2 slots, and the reason behind that is when in doubt, consult the user manual, and it will always give you a good indication. And just like this, you should also apply thermal paste on your sockets. I'm only joking. There was a little bit of a dig or some memes on the internet, but I just wanted to do that on video. But yeah, and after putting in the processor, it came the NVMe drive. Now the NVMe drive comes with a little heatsink, which you can see me installing right now. There was a lot of discussions that I found online as to if you should use a heatsink altogether or the provided one, such as the XPG one, or you should use your motherboard's provided one. As you'll be able to see, the motherboard provided one has a pretty large heat spreader, and that is not recommended because apparently NVMe drives work best when they are running hot rather than running cool. All things considered, I said to myself, the XPG one had a little kind of slit where the NAND was, and in that respect I was like, you know what, it's designed for the NVMe drive, it's not a generic heat spreader, and in this case I'm just going to use the one that XPG provided. Your mileage may vary, you might decide otherwise, but in my case that's the reason why I didn't put the pretty large heatsink that was provided by Asus. Anyway, moving on from heatsinks, I actually installed my actual CPU heatsink. I actually got it in the wrong direction initially, and that's why you might have seen me actually checking the direction or where the actual fans will be placed, because I have an exhaust fan at the back and I kind of feed that out on the exhaust fans. And then of course I made sure that everything was plugged in properly and made sure all the plugs and sockets were in. And I also double and triple checked everything just to make sure, including the CPU power supply at the top. It might seem really simple, but I actually only have an 8-pin, but this had an 8-pin and a 4-pin. In my case, I just needed to use an 8-pin, but I just wanted to double check in case things had changed over the years. It hadn't, but I just wanted to double check. It's, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of checking, no matter how geeky you think you might be. Always double check these things, because the last thing you want to do is undervolt or overvolt your processor and or your motherboard by just basically putting too much power on it. Then it came the fans. So you might have seen before I just did a line method rather than the P-dot method for my thermal paste application. That was just the one that was recommended for the i9-9900K. And after that, put in the CPU cooler, and there we go. Yay! And yes, there was that moment where I turned it on and nothing happened, and the reason behind that was because I put the power LED instead of the actual button press on the motherboard. Those little flimsy little things that you put on the corner of the right hand side of the motherboard. Those are pretty much present on every single motherboard. I just forgot the way it should have gone and essentially didn't power on, but then after that, when I played around with it, it turned on, and you can see me booting into the BIOS. So the first thing I did upon booting onto the BIOS was actually set XMP profile 1, and the reason behind that is because I wanted the RAM to run at its rated speed and timings, and XMP1 is pretty much that's exactly what it says on the tin. And you can be able to see over here, other than switching off Aurora RGB lights, there was nothing else that I really changed from it. From there, it was pretty much booting into Windows, and I just went through the setup process as you might expect. Nothing too special right there, and it was a pretty painless process. I had to activate Windows, and just to bear in mind that if you do go into getting Windows or installing a new PC build, make sure you have your original Windows key at hand, because I actually forgot it altogether. Then, after doing all of that and setting up my programs, I decided to actually test the system on stock. And when I say stock, it was kind of in inverted brackets of stock, because my understanding of the Core i9 was a little bit convoluted at the time when I was actually shooting this video. And the reason behind that is because you can see over here ridiculously high temperatures, which kind of makes me laugh. But that's because I was using the automated system within the BIOS, which basically overclocked the processor to 5 GHz. It's past its turbo frequency, and therefore ran it at 5 GHz across all cores, and therefore you could see the pretty high temperatures, and it was on auto voltage as well. Now I can't wait to share with you my experience of actually using the PC and actually overclocking or attempting to overclock the PC, but all I wanted to say, or all I wanted to show in that last couple of clips, is just the fact that I actually tested the PC for stability, simply because on my old PC build I had a faulty RAM module, and I didn't want that to cause any problems going forwards with overclocking or whatever have you. So based on that, ran Pram 95 for several hours. I think it was about 8 hours on the stock speeds, which was 5 gigahertz initially, and then I dropped it down to 4.7 gigahertz via the BIOS, letting Intel processor override the Asus overdrive of multi-core enhancement, and then just ran that as well for 17 hours. So essentially I have a stable system. In other words, I have a system that actually works, and there's no sort of hardware problems, at least that I can note. So I also wanted to share with you a few benchmarks that I had. Now there's a few different benchmarks. There was the 5 gigahertz benchmarks and the 4.7 gigahertz benchmarks. And as I said, you know, the different setting in the BIOS will determine what you get. I just wanted to share these with you just really quickly because I'm going to allude to them in a separate video which I'll be making about overclocking, and also a comparison of my old system with the new system and the actual experience that I had coming from a 3770K and 6 years later coming to a i9. It was just quite interesting to see the differences, but I'm going to keep that a bit of a secret for a future video so you guys can actually see for yourselves. But what I think I've built is a pretty neat PC, and it's got really nice specs, and I can't wait to actually get to use it. At time of talking right now, I haven't actually used my PC other than benchmarking and testing for stability, so I actually can't wait to actually game on it. So anyway, with that, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, favorite and share and all that good stuff, and yeah, welcome to 2020 people. Alright, totally dubbed out, bye bye.